everybody. Today we are debating human evolution, and we are starting right now. Ladies and gentlemen, thrilled to have you here for another epic debate. As today we have Erica joining us along with Praise. It's going to be a fun one, folks. Very excited. And also want to let you know, if it's your first time here, consider hitting that subscribe button, as we've got a lot more debates coming up. In fact, if you haven't heard of it, if you have been in a cave on Mars with your fingers in your ears, this Sunday, we are going to start with a debate on tour in person in Texas with David Wood and Samuel Nassan. And then on Monday, it just keeps getting better. It's going to be off the charts. It's going to be super dank. We are going to have David Wood and Matt Dillahunty pictured at the bottom right of your screen, where they will be debating God, morality, and secular humanism. So that's going to be a wild one, and that is also in person at the Atheist Experience Studio. So that would be a blast. But anyway, folks, this is going to be a great one tonight. Want to let you know, if you have a question during this debate, feel free to fire that question into the old live chat. And if you tag me with an @ModernDayDebate, it makes it easier for me to make sure I don't miss any. We will read through as many as we can at the end. Can't guarantee we'll get to all of them, but we'll sure try. And want to remind you, we are a nonpartisan channel. So that means we have no views. I never have any particular videos that are just me spouting off about my views on this or that. This is a purely debate channel. And so we want you to feel welcome, whether you be Christian, atheist, Republican, Democrat, you name it, whatever walk of life you're from, we hope you feel welcome. And with that, we are going to jump right into this. I want to let you know up front, both of the speakers, as you're listening, if you're like, I want to hear more, well, you can hear more. I have conveniently placed their links down in the description. So feel free to check those out. And Praise, I've got the timer set for 9 minutes and 59 seconds. Don't think about going over it, because I would enjoy... That's right. Don't test me. There's nothing I'd enjoy more than cutting you off, Praise. So with that, thanks so much. And Praise, the floor is all yours.
So I salute you, James, for setting up this debate. You're a boss. And I appreciate Erica for agreeing to this discussion with me. It should be a good discussion. I have to do one quick thing, too. I have to give a shout out to SFT tomorrow for a debate with Erica. So check that out on his channel. I just want to briefly mention that. And also, I feel there are many paradoxical holes in evolution that can be exposed, but I decided to focus on the specific narrative evolutionists credulously hold to regarding the so-called human evolution. I want to highlight what Jeff Hecht had to say about human evolution. Quote, "If humans do not match chimpanzees genetically more than other mammals, then common ancestry is falsified," end quote. Let's work off that, and let's see if there's possible data that shows other mammals are more genetically similar to us than chimpanzees, which consequently would debunk evolution. How about musculus, aka the common mouse? The mouse genome was sequenced, and the data reveals that mice are 95% similar to humans. Citation, yourgenome.com. Interestingly, Sean Humphrey and Russ Tellum published papers showing pigs are even more genetically similar to us than mice, which would make pigs 95% plus similar to us. How about cats? A study in 2007 showed Abyssinian cats are 90% similar to humans. Lastly, dogs have been shown to be 95% genetically similar to humans too. Citation, Stanley Corinne, PhD. So we have three or four clear-cut examples of mammals other than chimps being 90% plus similar to humans. Subsequently, that brings us to the genetic similarity of chimps and other primates with humans. In 2003, Tatsuya Anzai published research showing humans and chimpanzees are 87% similar after sequencing 1.9 million base pairs. This is damning to evolution because this was only a small sample size. Moreover, the Chimpanzee Sequencing and Analysis Consortium published a complete draft of the sequencing of the chimpanzee genome, where they found that 2.4 billion of the base pairs of the human genome line up nearly perfectly with 2.4 billion of the base pairs of the chimp genome. As the paper of the draft sequence says, quote, best reciprocal nucleotide level alignments of the chimpanzee and human genomes over 2.4 gigabytes of high quality sequence, including the 89 megabytes from chromosome X and 7.5 megabytes from chromosome Y, end quote. So out of the 3.2 billion base pairs in the human genome, and about the same in the chimp genome, 2.4 billion of them line up nearly perfectly. It turns out there are some differences within 2.4 billion pairs, and they account for about 3% of those 2.4 billion base pairs. So if those 2.4 billion base pairs lined up perfectly, the chimp and human genome would be about 75% similar. However, given that 3% of those base pairs don't line up perfectly, human and chimp DNA are about 72% similar. Several geneticists obviously looked at this data, and there are those who think that number will eventually drop below 72 once all the data is in. In fact, Dr. Richard Buggs, geneticist at University of Florida, says, quote, I predict that when we have a reliable, complete chimpanzee genome, the overall similarity of human genome will prove to be close to 70% and very far from 99%, end quote, citation, digibron.nl. Even if we go with a conservative number like 95% similar, which is citation from the National Academy of Sciences, R.J. Britton, it still falls short of the pig, dog, and mouse, therefore demonstratably and conclusively disproving common ancestry as per Jeff Hecht. This ultimately negates evolution because without common ancestry or even human evolution, there is no such thing as evolution. I'm going to take it a step further and show how humans are completely unique to primates. Only 29% of the chimpanzee proteins are one-for-one identical to humans. Citation Nature, volume 437, pages 69 through 87. In fact, humans are now considered more similar to orangutans than chimpanzees. In a citation, Science Daily, June 18, 2009, hereby overthrowing the conventional viewpoint of human evolution. The chimp Y chromosome is only half as long as a human Y chromosome, meaning that there is less than 50% overall similarity. The authors of the paper concluded that the human Y-chimp chromosome differences were as great as the differences they expected between humans and birds. Citation, John Hawkes, January 14, 2010. In order for the ape chromosome to evolve into the Y chromosome, apes had to add 41 genes. In order for apes to add genes, they would have to have a genetic mechanism to generate new genes and insert them into the chromosomes. But apes do not have any gene generating system, nor do apes have a gene insertion system. This means that ape to human evolution theory is missing the genetic mechanisms necessary for evolution to actually take place. Why is it that primates are twice as strong as us, beating sumo wrestlers in a tug of war? Why is it their jaws are far superior than ours? They literally can rip into a coconut in seconds. Why is it they are completely immune to infection when we are not immune to infection? They have dense, thick fur for protecting them from the elements. We got cancer. We get cancer, they do not. We sunburn, they do not. Primates have a far better methylation system. They have far better vision and see colors better than us. Humans need shoes. And apes do not. They do not. They have no allergies. Their hearing is better than us. They have 3 bones in their ear. They have better bone density. For example, they can fall from a tree and break nothing. They are immune to infectious diseases when millions of humans die. If we are part of the primate species, and evolution has utterly failed, even evolutionists have to concede we lost something and not gained something. Yet primates do not have a lock and knee joint for upright walking. While primates can walk on two legs for a short time, they are really quadrupeds on the ground and have breakers. They're breakers, they're arm swingers. Humans have an S-shaped curved spine so that the head and the S-shaped curved spine so that the head and the trunk are balanced over the center of the gravity. Primates do not. We have a wide curved pelvis providing large attachment sites for strong abductor and rotator muscles. Primates do not. We have a plantar grade foot. They do not. So if you take the profile, the slope back to the large jaws and the small cranium. Ape noses are relatively wide and flat. A chimpanzee cranial capacity averages about 400 cubic centimeters, while human capacity averages around 1350. Neanderthals had 1520. The most apparent difference is language. Humans can fluently speak multiple languages, while apes cannot permanently. They can't even permanently. Several primates were hooked to electrodes and were able to speak. However, without these electrodes hooked up, they could only grunt and screech. It's abundantly clear that humans were created uniquely and not through any evolutionary process. With that, I end my time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that praise. We will now jump into Erica's opening statement. So thanks very much, Erica, for being with us. By the way, have to give Erica some serious street cred, as it is past midnight where she is in London right now, and she's been a super good sport. Even letting me, I was so behind, she let me delay by an hour. I owe you. Thanks, Erica.
Oh, there's nothing to worry about. Honestly, I'm staying up these days pretty late anyways. I've got to sort myself out with my thesis, and what am I going to do because there's a pandemic going on. So that's why I'm more than happy to be here, distracting myself, distracting other people, and engaging in some conversation. So thank you, Praise, for your opening statement. I do very much appreciate it. If it's okay with everybody, is it all right if I share my screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right, let's see if I can actually manage to get this right, huh? I'm always screwing the sharing screen thing up. All right, can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
Very cool. All right, let me get that up. Just hold on. Start the slideshow if I can. All right, so my name is Erica. My credentials are kind of as follows. I got a BSA in animal science for my undergraduate, picked up a minor in biology and another one in anthropology. I'm currently pursuing my master's of research in primatology. So I love to talk about primates. It's pretty much my favorite subject. And I maintain that both myself, Praise, and of course everyone watching, we're all apes, and we all fall under the natural classification of other primates and other mammals in general. You're probably going to recognize some of the slides in this presentation. This is the same one that I used when talking to Kent Hovind, because I think that this one it kind of has a perfect setup for the conversation we're having tonight. So human evolution, it's kind of undeniable. Oops, there we go. So as I said previously, we do indeed fall into all of the categorizations that other animals fall into. We're eukaryotes, we're animals, we're chordates, we're vertebrates, we're mammals, and we're eutherians. Everything that we use, all the traits that we use to categorize any other creature in any of these categories, we can also apply to ourselves. There is no difference morphologically. But we're also primates. And when I say that we're primates, I mean there are a myriad of different kinds of traits and categories that we use to classify the other primates, completely removing humans from the equation. The problem is when we look to humans, they also fall into this category. We have enormously large brains, even when accounting for our body size, binocular color vision, grasping dexterous hands that end in digits tipped with fingers rather than claws, and flexible shoulder girdles. We fall into this along with a myriad of other different mammals. But we're also haplorhines because we have dry noses instead of wet noses. We can't synthesize our own vitamin C, and our lips aren't split. But if you look in the mirror, you can still see a remnant of it. We also have post-orbital plates rather than bars, and essentially the guys that are kicked out of the haplorhine club are going to be your strepsirrhines, so your lemurs, etc. But we're also simiiforms, or sometimes known as anthropoid primates, because we have all of those previously mentioned traits, but we also have even larger brain-to-body ratios. We also have the emergence of these special, super-derived social organizations, usually made of multiple males and multiple females, also as well as their dependent offspring. We also have unique structures with regard to our hind feet, our ankles, our hands, etc. We've kicked out the tarsiforms in this category. But we're also catarrhines because our nostrils open downward rather than upward. And if you pop that rhesus macaque's mouth open right there, which I wouldn't recommend because some of them have rather large canines, you'll find that they have the same dental formula as you do with 2, 1, 2, 3. None of us have any prehensile tails, unfortunately, so we can't grab things. But we're also hominoids because we have the unique Y-molar pattern and reduced caudal vertebrates. You'll notice that when you look at any of the other apes, none of them really have tails, and unfortunately, like I said, we fall into that too. We don't even get a useless tail. And all of the other apes have a more increased propensity towards bipedality. But we're also hominids because we share a 96% similarity with essentially the chimpanzees and the bonobos when we're looking at coding base pairs, which I'm sure we'll talk about at great length. All of the hominids use tools and have sort of a protoculture where they pass along these traits to their offspring. This happens in chimpanzees and bonobos, and especially in orangutans. We also have long gestational periods, and we take care of our kids for a long period of time. Most of us are also omnivorous. There was a recent study that was very cool done out in West Africa on how chimpanzees are starting to use sticks that they've sharpened with their canines to poke at bush babies and essentially skewer them and then consume them. So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So similar to how you would classify this leopard in all of these varying categories, you can also compare that with humans because we are indeed primates. We share all the traits that primates have. Same with the hominids, same with genus Homo, etc. So essentially my point here is that there is no reasonable way to classify the primates morphologically, by phylogeny, really any way that you can reasonably create categories in the animal kingdom and reasonably exclude the humans. We share too many of these traits. Essentially, it boils down to saying, well, maybe there's a soul, but that's not empirical. And as creationists so frequently propose, it's not science. So we could also talk about genetics, as I know we will. So when genomes are kind of aligned side by side, it's known as a genomic comparison. And we do this to essentially see, all right, well, how similar is genome A to genome B? And we do this in humans to determine paternity. And this is what I harp on every single time. The way that we do a paternity test in a human is basically a dumbed down version of full sequential comparison that we do when we're comparing humans with chimpanzees and with bonobos. You'll see 3 links down here at the bottom, and the most recent one, the one at the top, is from 2012. I noticed that Praise didn't link very many recent sources at all. Most of them were indeed quite old, so I tend to defer to the most recent literature, and this indeed showed that not only are humans most closely related to chimps and bonobos, but they are most closely related to us when compared to the genomes of the gorillas and the orangutans. We're each other's closest living relative, and that's pretty cool. So essentially, if you're going to kick out genomic comparison as a means, you've got a lot of courts to call. But not only are DNA tests admissible in courts, so are fossils. So we're going to talk about paleontology because I love paleontology. So if you look at these 2 images here, you got to get from point A to point B, right? Because although our common ancestor with chimps wasn't a chimp, it was indeed likely very chimp-like. So you'll notice a bunch of different characteristics between these 2 little pictures here that are unique to the organism which bears it. So we can kind of make a prediction. Can we show a gradient from the ape-like ancestor to modern humans through fossil morphology in geologic time? The answer is yes, we can. And before we move on, I'm going to say Kent is quite a big fan of saying, well, it's just a fossil, it's a bone in the dirt. You don't know it had any offspring. But animals are very unlikely to fossilize overall. So when we find specimens, it's actually statistically extremely likely that they were a member of a sustainable population at some point. So let's talk about some of these ancestors because they're really cool. So we have the ape-like hominids. Oh yes, Sahelanthropus chadensis, Ardipithecus cadava, and Ramidus and Roarantuganensis. Now these guys we knew were more bipedal than modern chimpanzees and modern members of genus Pan in general because of their femoral head and the shape of their pelvis. We also know that their brain case was getting larger and the foramen magnum was scooting underneath the skull to allow for bipedality. We also have the mosaic hominids. These are going to be our Australopithecines, even more derived traits. And the reason we know that Lucy walked upright instead of being a knuckle walker like Answers in Genesis likes to propose is again because of the pelvis, the feet, the knees, the foramen magnum at the base of the skull, and the spine, which I'm sure we'll talk plenty about. We also see some cool pictures at the bottom here where we show an image of the Tong child, which is a very famous fossil that looks very human indeed. And that's because one of the proposed hypotheses for why humans have head shapes, skull shapes the way that they are, is due to a phenomenon known as retained neoteny, where we keep traits that our younger individuals of our ancestors had. Here are some really cool comparisons that we see when we're comparing sort of Sahelanthropus or chimpanzees all the way up through the Australopithecines and to modern humans. Look at the knees on the bottom right. They are almost indistinguishable from one another, and they are valgus in nature. This is so that we can hold our body weight directly underneath us and efficiently walk. Look at the heads of the femurs. Look at the way that the toe is in line. Look at the parabolic palate. Look at the foramen magnum. Darwin couldn't ask for a better transition than the ones that we have found so far. It is an unbearably rich fossil record. So there's the classic, well, which one is, ask a 5-year-old to pick the different kind. They're going to pick the chimp, which means that Australopithecus afarensis is going to be a part of our gang, which would be that individual at the bottom left. That would be a part of the humankind if you're going by morphology alone. Finally, we have almost finally, we have Homo habilis and Homo rudolfensis. We are getting close to anatomically modern humans because this brain case is rising up all the way from 700 to 900 cubic centimeters, and we're getting more reduction in prognathism. So this is more, we're looking at the crania and the postcrania, not so much that movement to bipedality, which occurred pretty early. And we also have the late intelligent omnivores. These are going to be our classic, what we would consider quote unquote human, but they are really just members of our genera. So we have Erectus, Heidelbergensis, Neanderthalensis, and Floresiensis, all of which overlapped and indeed lived at the same time period, which is really, really cool. We have some other guys here, Denisovans and Naledi, but we don't have time to talk about them. So what I'm going to say is that this hypothesis is indeed knocked out of the park like a home run baseball. You couldn't say that A is going to overnight become something like M in this picture, but A to B, B to C, C to D, these are found through geologic time, and indeed the morphologies change subtly. This is macroevolution. And we can talk about dating too, if we want, radiometric dating and why it is indeed valid. So here are the answers if you wanted to pause and see who's who in that last picture. So just bones in the dirt? I don't really think so. Like I said, they're statistically likely to be members of populations. Specimens such as skull appeared laid out in the geologic column according to their morphology and fit into the tree of human evolution along with their radiometric dates without known exceptions. We don't find oddballs. There is no rabbit in the Cambrian, so to speak. And such, because of this, we know that by an enormous margin, most of these display the evolution of hominids through geologic time, rather than species killed in a Noachian deluge. So, I just think this is really cool stuff, and I don't know why so many people seem so eager to just toss it to the wayside. So to begin to convince me and invalidate the current classification system of relation by genetics and reform all those court systems, then invalidate radiometric dating and prove that all the hominids lived and died in the global flood, formulate a kind that can empirically separate modern humans from the other apes as well as between the hominids, and be able to tell me which of those hominids are humans, members of the humankind or the ape kind. And finally, we need to create a population growth system that accommodates the number of stone tools found in Africa. This is something that I didn't touch on, but we can touch on. That's kind of a little side note. There's way too many stone tools in Africa to accommodate for people leaving the Tower of Babel and going over there and just leaving trillions of stone tools. Trillion with a T. So yeah, that's pretty much my presentation. I'm ready to have a discussion.
Thank you very much,
Awesome.
Erica. And we'll jump right into the discussion mode. I'm going to pull you out of screen share if you're all right with that.
Please do. I don't know how to do it by myself.
Let's see. I am remembering how to do this.
Just kidding. I might know how to do it.
I used to have to do this for Neff all the time. We miss Nephilim Free. I hope he's doing well. So, Neff, we love you, buddy. Hopefully we get to have Nephilim. We haven't had Neff on in a long time. It's time. We need to get Neff. It has to be his triumphant return. The
time is now.
That's right. So, with that, Open conversation. Thanks so much, both of you. And just a quick update, folks. Their links are both in the description, just so you know, in case you hadn't heard.
Very cool. All right, Praise, kick us off. What do you want to talk about? I'm ready.
All right, yeah, I'd like to address some of your points in your presentation.
Please do.
Yeah, so one of the things that caught my eye, you said we should not find a rabbit out of the place in the geological column. Well, the Ashley phosphate beds in North Carolina actually show there's a rabbit in the geological column there. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
I am not, but I can look it up as we speak. The Ashley phosphate beds, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Geoscience world. Do you know when this was essentially proposed as being a rabbit? And are you actually saying it really was found in what is considered to be the Cambrian?
Right. Yeah.
I would be utterly shocked, but I'm not seeing anything from a cursory look.
Yeah, I'll have to dig up that citation, but yeah, a couple other things. You mentioned about the jaw shape. Well, our jaw shape is parabolic shape. No primate has that. So there's another distinction there I think is needs to be made.
Well, but Praise, we are primates. Can you give a single reason morphologically or genetically as to why we're not primates?
Sure. Yeah. We have, let's see here. We have 22. We have 13 pairs of ribs. And I mean, we have 12 pairs of ribs and apes have 13 pairs of ribs. We can even go, we have 33 bones in our vertebrae and apes have 22 or primates have 22. I mean, there's so many.
Yes, but that's in the caudal vertebra, and the rib situation is in no way even remotely as severe as the chromosome situation. And yet we still find explanations for that in proposed fusion sites that are accepted by essentially everyone besides Tompkins, at least in the genetics community. Now, if you want to talk about genetics, we certainly can.
Yeah.
But I find that it's very interesting to me that when I have a conversation with a creationist, I say, "What makes us not a primate?" And they'll list sort of strange little tidbits like essentially what you've just mentioned here, or perhaps like a protein difference, like we're looking at the similarities between genetic similarities between two proteins, right? And they'll be like, look how different they are. And my point is, well, yes, they should be different. They shouldn't be identical. Otherwise, we would be chimpanzees. But the fact of the matter is, from our gestational period to our tool use to how we structure our social systems, there are invariably behavioral similarities that can and are drawn, but also genetically. Again, I listened to every single citation you made and I wrote them down in my notebook. And while you were, I was trying to do my due diligence and listen at the same time. But when I would have a moment, I would look it up very quickly. And the latest source that I could find that you mentioned, and I might have missed one, was 2009. You also mentioned 2003 was for sort of the sequencing of the chimpanzee genome, but the chimpanzee genome was fully sequenced in 2005.
Yeah, and that's what I cited there. That's one of my citations in 2005.
Yes, I heard 2003. I could have been wrong.
Maybe that was the first. I gave two citations for that.
So then what would you make of the additional work done on the triple comparison of the human genome, the bonobo genome, and the chimpanzee genome, which were laid out, sequenced essentially, and looked at side by side in 2012?
Yeah, I would say that the orangutan genome now, they're saying I don't know if you looked at that it keeps on changing. Like the orangutan genome, we're more related to orangutans now.
I'm really, I hate to call you on this, Praise, but that's simply not the case. I mean, I've kept very up to date on the literature with regard to genetic similarities between the great apes, because as someone who's very interested in not just human evolution, but the evolution of the orangutans who are so far out there in Asia, we have to essentially look at their genetic splitting times to see, okay, well, when did the orangutan end up over there in Asia? Why is it that most of the apes are centered in Africa and the rest end up in Asia? And by the rest, I mean the orangutan. And if you want to include gibbons and siamangs, in addition, you can. But the orangutan is by far and away the most distantly related ape when we're comparing humans and the other apes. Humans then bonobos, potentially chimpanzees, depending who you're talking about. They kind of go back and forth. Then gorillas, then orangutans, then gibbons, and then
this is in Science Daily, June 18th, 2009. So this
right, but that's 2001. That's 2009. So you would hope that would have been essentially mentioned in any of the recent genomic papers that I've essentially been forced to read for my master's degree, that constantly harp on these genomic comparisons because they have such a heavy implication on not only conservation but also human evolution and the evolution of the other primates. So why is no one mentioning this? I have literally in my entire life never heard a creationist, nor have I ever heard anybody in sort of the conventional science community suggest that humans are more closely related to orangutans than they are to chimpanzees.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, the belief keeps on shifting among evolutionists. There's nothing that's consistent with their viewpoints, and maybe you can address some of my points too with the common genetic, like we have the common genetics there with apes, cats, dogs. I mean, with cats, dogs, and in the
absolutely. I think it was Abyssinian cats.
Right.
You mentioned rats or mice.
Mice, yeah, that's
yes,
it.
I believe
Yeah.
it was those three. So because we're all mammals, now I don't know this for certain because I didn't have time to. I wanted to again give as much due diligence as I can during your opening statement, but I would bet all the tea in China that those comparisons, two things. One, that those comparisons were based off of a shared mammal trait rather than a genomic comparison, because when I was listening to you speak, I didn't hear you mention that they were full genomic comparisons. Then two, I would wager that if you included chimpanzees or macaques for that matter, a more distantly related primate, in the metric, in that sort of by using the metrics that you're using to get those comparisons with mice and Abyssinian cats and pigs, you would find that humans and chimps are more closely related. Because you're right. If you're doing a full genomic comparison and you could prove that mice are more closely related to humans than chimps, that would be huge. That would absolutely and remember, I'm saying genomic comparison, so the full genome side by side coding base pairs. But the problem is we've already compared a huge number of mammals to one another, and that does include, I don't know about Abyssinian cats, but certainly pigs and mice. And they're way down the list when you're doing coding base pair, full length of the genome comparison, humans and the rest. You end up with what I said previously. I would challenge you to provide a source that says otherwise, that is like past the 1970s.
Yeah, I mean, the mouse genome was fully sequenced and it's genetic. So this would be genome.com, and that would be a source you can check out. So if it's 95% similar, and I even gave you the National Academy of Sciences is one of my citations, that it's not 98 or 99. It's not even close. Even this is even from the National Academy of Sciences. I mean, they're putting at the highest 95.
So two things that I want to ask. Well, first of all, 95 is the generally given number for genomic comparison flat. But when we're talking about coding base pairs, that's when you climb up into that. It's actually 98.8%. So you round up and you say, well, it's almost 99. But realistically, it's not quite there. Interestingly enough, when we sequenced the Neanderthal genome, we got 99.7. And you and I would be 99.9% similar with our entire genome. So it's interesting that we have this stepwise momentum in genetic relation. But I would challenge you to pull up that citation and see what it is that they're actually comparing, because there's a huge difference between comparing segments of a genome, the entire thing, whether it's coding, whether it's not. And I defer again to the most recent literature. Which concerning the three primary individuals we're talking about today, so humans and genus Pan, so bonobos and chimps, that's going to be that 2012 paper published in Nature.
Yeah. Here's another point that I would like to maybe respond back to that with, is the claim the genome is a blueprint for making us is a presumption. It's not a proven science. For example, there are quadrillion neuroconnections in the human brain, which is vastly different than the bits in the human genome, and also the primate genome. So I would say that standard trying to gain a commonality in our genes is probably faulty to begin with. So I would challenge that.
I'm going to disagree for a primary reason. If you compare my genome to that of my mother's, it's going to be similar than if you compare your and my genome, correct?
But I think what you're confusing though is like, because you're going to use bits, and I mean that's what they do. They take a portion of or a sample size of the ape genome and the human genome, and I'm saying that's impossible to draw connections there because we have a quadrillion neuro connections.
So
And
I get the idea. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Continue.
oh no,
I will monologue.
yeah, no, I mean, because I know you. I mean, you do have the credibility to speak on this. So I mean, I'm going to opt it to you if you have something to bring in there. But I just think that there's I think that there's problems and paradoxes. I don't think that evolutionists have addressed sufficiently anyway, and that's one of them is like I was saying earlier, is the commonality or common genes with other animals. And even though I'm sure you, like you said, my dating might be, my citation might be outdated, so I'll have to check into that. But to me, it's a better argument for a common designer, not really a common ancestry. And I think that fits a better model.
I would suggest, even if you wanted to defer to a common designer rather than common ancestry, you still can't get around the fact that no matter how we classify organisms, unless you're appealing to the supernatural, you can't leave humans out of the ape family, out of the hominoids. With regard to what I was saying, I'm not certain what you're speaking of with like bits and things like that. All I'm saying is that we can tell there is definitively a relationship between the similarities between the genetics of two individuals and how closely related they are, whether or not they share a common ancestor. So if you, like I said, if you compared mine and my mom and then my grandma, you would find that my mom and I share a common ancestor in my grandma, right?
Sure, yeah, but that would be a human genome though.
But why can you, like, this is, I've asked Standing for this, and I've also asked Kent, why and where do you draw that line? No one can answer that for me. It's all arbitrary. It's like, well, they're different species. Well, okay, well then why can you say that all the apes belong to an ape kind? They're different species.
Well, I would say probably I would say some of the things like, well, we have a lock and knee joint. I don't know if you really researched into that, but we have where it's irreducible. The knee joints, the lock and knee joint, and apes just don't have that. And they're really quadrupeds, and for a few moments they can stand upright. Apes.
I agree. Yeah, they will actually get severe issues with arthritis and sort of degradation of the pelvic head and in the socket of the pelvis. If they spend too much time walking on 2 feet, they're also very flat-footed. That's why it's so important that when we look to the fossil record, we see this slow acquisition of traits that allow for bipedality. And what I mean when I say that is, if you were to put like Lucy, Australopithecus afarensis, up against a modern human in a race, she's going to lose. She is not an incredibly efficient biped, but she would beat a chimp if the chimp were running on 2 legs. You see what I'm saying? Like there are biomechanics labs that do these kinds of studies based off of, say, the Laetoli footprints or something like that. They look at how an organism distributes its weight, and then they put that into a simulation, and then they try to figure out how it may have walked or what its skeleton may have looked like when it was moving. So there's this. I totally agree. Yeah, you no modern ape is, other than humans, is going to be an efficient biped, because they don't have walking knees. Why would they? They're quadrupeds. They're terrestrial. Most of them are terrestrial quadrupeds, except for orangs, which spend all their time in the trees. So I would agree with you on that. I would say look to the fossils.
And I think one other question I have for you is, do you agree that primates, or especially apes, are far superior than us? And why is that the case if they are so far superior than us?
Praise, this is an excellent question. I like this one a lot. So I had the utmost pleasure of getting to visit a tribe of hunter-gatherers back in 2015. They live in Tanzania. They're known as the Hadzabe. Incredibly low disease. The calluses on their feet are like as thick as, you know, 3 cards or 3 like stacks of cards or whatever together, like whatever. They're thick. They're really thick calluses on their feet because they walk around barefoot quite a bit. And so my question would essentially be, well, okay, my point would be rather, it's quite interesting that they have such low disease rates, and it's quite interesting that they have thick calluses on their feet and don't necessarily need to wear shoes. Why is that? And the answer is, you and I are incredibly feeble when compared to individuals who are still subject to natural selection and have no access to modern medicines. Essentially, when someone in a hunter-gatherer tribe is sick, they die. And that means those genes don't get passed on. Like, let's say you have a propensity for asthma. That's not going to get passed on. I mean, you're right. You and I are incredibly weak compared to first of all, humans before modern, or not modern medicine, humans before the agricultural revolution. But also, you know, we're basically so numerous and intense that we've null and voided natural selection. On the other hand, chimps are constantly dying for random reasons. They do actually fall out of trees, interestingly enough, sometimes. And yet they still will die if they get infected with the disease. Jane Goodall, when she was at Gombe Stream several decades ago, a huge polio outbreak hit her G group of chimps, and tons of them died. So if the right conditions, you know, are essentially met, they're more robust than us, but that doesn't mean they're invincible.
Right. I'm just saying, looks like humans have lost, if anything, the evolutionary process, if that is true, we've lost something. And usually even the strength, and I think strength would be one of the most important features for us to carry on through the apes. If that was true, we would have to carry on the strength, but also, I mean, even the fur of apes too, that'd be something that we would probably want to carry on as well because of the climate. I mean, there's if you go to freaking Minnesota in the wintertime, you would probably need some of that ape coat. So,
well, two you know, somewhat quick comments. One on the fur, we lost the fur, but we are one of the best sweaters in the animal kingdom, which is why even if a chimp was on all fours, even you or I likely could outrun, as far as distance goes, a chimpanzee, because we are incredible long distance runners. That's like, we're good runners and we're good throwers. Those are the only two things that humans have physically over most of the animal kingdom. As far as strength goes, have you ever seen a chimp try to paint? They're really bad at it. It's because they have no like small muscle dexterity. There's a difference between like slow and fast twitch muscles. And essentially humans have a huge portion of not just our brains, but our muscles themselves that are devoted to making very small, precise movements that say might be useful for throwing a weapon or you know, using a bow or something along those lines. Whereas a chimpanzee specifically, is 3 times stronger than us. But if you ask them to thread a needle, they'd never be able to do it. So it's all a trade-off game. You see what I mean? So it's like, yeah, of course it sucks that we're way weaker than apes, but than sort of the other apes. But at the same time, apes aren't, you know, the chimpanzees aren't the ones who are able to sort of scratch early cuneiform writings into a tablet, not because they're necessarily not intelligent enough, but also just because they physically can't do it.
I gotcha. So we have a subcutaneous layer of fat under our skin, and that's why we stay warmer. But what's your explanation for why we have that fat under our skin?
Well, humans essentially, I actually did a video about this a while ago because I was thinking the same thing. I was like, why are humans the fattest apes? Like, why do we put on fat so much easier when a chimp sits around and first of all, they sit around eating grass all day, so it's not super difficult for them to keep the weight off. But in addition, they have a lot more of a fat type known as brown adipose, whereas we have a fat type known as white adipose. If I remember correctly, white adipose is actually much more conducive for storing fat and using it in cognitive means, essentially. So big brain, you got to be able to store fat more efficiently because that brain is going to take up a huge portion of the energy that you acquire by feeding.
I see. Yeah, this is some interesting. So, I mean, if you can provide some of that science, I'd love to look
Oh,
into that.
sure. I would love to. I can absolutely email it to you or whatever you
Awesome.
need.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, and here's a couple other things I'd like maybe if you address. According to like, there's this is part of the Cosmos, and they have the anthropology section there. They put they in their headline all Australopithecus were dismissed as an ancestor, and why are these things being published? Because I don't think you would hold to that, right? You would say that um, some of these Australopithecus or whatever.
Sorry, it's hard. It
Yeah.
actually is. They're weird names.
Yeah, and I would say you would say they're valid, and but see, there's other sources out there. None, I don't know if you would say Cosmos is like a creationist or a conservative source. I would say it's more neutral. I mean, I don't see any type of bias there. And so, why are these sources saying this type of stuff? And I'll just add one other thing too. BBC published two articles in 2017 and 2019 stating there are no human ancestors been found. So these seems to be paradoxes or inconsistencies in the theory. But I like to see how you would address that.
Sure. I mean, it's kind of difficult because the situation with anthropology is every time you dig up a brand new skull, the question is, where does it go?
Yeah.
And essentially, the way that you determine that is by looking at the traits, looking at dating the rock that it was found in, if that is indeed the most conducive way to do it. I think occasionally you can do it in other means, but generally speaking, radiometric dating and using isochron and things like that are going to help you get a decent range. But I think I do know that BBC article that you're talking about. And essentially the situation with the human ancestors is very similar to basically all fossils we find. It's always going to be an incomplete picture. So it's actually impossible to say for certain, okay, well, Australopithecus afarensis is indeed our direct relative. It may very well be the case, but it also could be that Australopithecus africanus is a more direct relative. Or it could be that it's anamensis, or it could be that there's a line that you can draw through line through all three. And these are answers that I'm not sure we'll ever truly get. But the point of the matter is, we can see a trend of human traits, quote unquote, anatomically modern human traits, emerging through geologic time in varying species. What this suggests is that these traits were being selected for basically wherever they popped up. And it tells us that even if afarensis isn't our direct relative, the one that was, even if we never find it, is likely going to have a lot of similarities with it. And that's kind of just the way that it goes. But that is a little preemptive. We could come up with some incredible science in the future that allows us to extract DNA from new finds or whatever. With regard to afarensis in particular, as far as I know, the consensus is still that afarensis is likely in the direct line, just based off of the timing, where it is, very particular, and the traits that it has. But the Ardipithecus species, Cadaba and Ramidus, they hop on and off that train constantly because some people think that they go on a line towards this individual known as Kenyanthropus platyops, which I don't know. It could be that that's a direct line with the humans too, but we're still figuring out essentially how to put these specific branches in those locations. And the way we do that is, of course, with genetics, a fascinating field known as paleogenetics. And also the physical traits and dating where they come from. But you're right, it's not a precise science, and it's probably still going to change a lot. That's just the nature of the beast with this. It's very similar to certain aspects of medicine. We're constantly having to change and adapt to new finds in medicine and, of course, in paleontology and even in ecology, just because things are constantly changing. We live in a fluid world.
Right. But see, I think this is a good point, though, that yes, creationists have faith that God created, but see, the point is that evolutionists would have faith what they believe too. There's going to be a certain point where you're going to have to trust and have a little bit of credulity to believe your theory, and that's what I'm trying trying to point out to some of these internet evolutionists. They make it sound like evolution's ironclad. Well, you just proven, like, I think it's not ironclad as what people like to present it as. I think that's a valid point that I'm trying to make to people. But
Well, I get what you're saying, Praise, but it's not that I'm saying evolution is an ironclad. I'm saying specific lineages are subject to change. As do we know organisms change over time? And at least if you're accepting of the physics that goes into radiometric dating, are we accepting that there is macroevolution through vast amounts of geologic time? I don't think you'll find a biologist who's going to disagree with you on that. But specific lineages, yeah, they're subject to change based off of finding new information, new fossil finds, like we found in the Letty, I think 4 or 5 years ago, which was a totally fascinating and cool thing to be a part of. But yeah, that you look at that and you're like, okay, well, this changes things up, but that doesn't invalidate evolution. That
no,
adds a cool new piece to the picture.
Right. No, my point is, though, that it is not a settled science. Like we're going to put this into, like a tautology or something like that. There's only a point where you can go so far into your beliefs, and that's where it ends. And I say, as far as what I'm seeing right now, both sides are credulous on some of their beliefs. I'm saying creationists are too, but I would say also evolutionists are too. So
I think that you're really, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to compliment you on something. I actually saw a conversation you had on Noah's flood at some point, but I'm with you. I like your take on that. And I think that you generally are open to new information.
Absolutely.
So I think I would though caution you, just as sort of when we're applying it to things that I would consider empirical. And I would say, well, in science, you go with what's parsimonious. And when I say that, like, I'm just essentially saying, like, it's an Occam's razor type situation. And it's also what does the data fit? So while I would, and I say this very hesitantly, I would agree on the fact that there is a lot of work to be done in all areas of science. I would certainly not limit it to evolution. And I wouldn't say that it's faith-based. I would say we're working with hypotheses based off of the data that we currently have. And because the nature of science is to change when new things come to light, that's proper practice to say, okay, well, yeah, it's going to be subject to change. Theories tend to be ironclad in their concept. So in the concept of evolution, we'd say, okay, well, the tenets of evolution are indeed very valid. Again, you're not going to find a biologist that disagrees with that, but you are going to find so many different biologists, anthropologists, ecologists, whatever, that disagree on specifics, whether it's in evolution or ecology or whatever field, because people get really passionate about their specific study, right? I would say, what's parsimonious about creationism? What can you look at and say, well, can you look at the data for, say, like what you've done with like a local flood, right? Like, I would agree with you. I think that there was a large local flood in the Mesopotamian area. What is it, like 8 to 12,000 years ago?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Right. I would agree that the parsimonious explanation for like why there are so many different cultures that have flood stories is, one, people tend to settle near rivers and rivers flood, but also I think that it's fair enough to say that right now you can definitely make a case for a large localized flood in that region. But are you applying that to creation, a 6-day creation, in the same way?
Oh yeah, I'm not necessarily a 6-day creationist either, and I'm sure. I mean, I've got a little backlash, but see, I have like SFT, he understands, and also Raw Matt and some other ones. They understand my position. When it comes to like life itself, I believe like human life and maybe some biological life, that it's young. But when it comes to the age of the earth, I do believe that it's much older, and they understand that, and some younger creationists understand that. But yeah, I'm not necessarily in that camp yet, because I just don't see. I have some things hermeneutically I have to work out with that. But yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I think that's good practice. I mean, you want to make sure that you're forming a hypothesis of the world around you that's like most informed, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been monopolizing the conversation. I really have
Oh,
been.
no, I see. But yeah, I have, because you have the expertise. So I do hand it off to you. I mean, because I want to hear you have to say, and I give more respect to that. On any conversation, even if it was a Bible scholar, I would probably lend them more time and let them talk more. But I'm just trying to pick your brain on a couple things. And so one thing that I want to try to bust this misnomer too is I don't like the term creation. Like, can you prove creation? I think the proper one, the proper title or tag to give us would be more intelligent design. I think that's probably more acceptable to me. I think that's just a more proper, title, or ascribe that to a believer would, if that believes in science, that God created something. I think intelligent design is probably more proper. I don't know. I mean, so I guess other people might disagree, but that's just my line of thinking, because Genesis is a creation doctrine, and I don't like to mix those two. So, I mean, that's just a side point, though.
Sure, sure. No, I mean, I'm glad. I do want to know where you're coming from. That's the thing.
Right.
I as someone who's very interested in primates and the like, I'm certainly not an expert when it comes to theology. I do my best, but
Oh, yeah, yeah.
that's not my field. So I try to defer to the experts on that one.
Right, exactly. And that's I'm going to defer to you here too, is for some of this stuff.
I wish I could say I was an expert. I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Let's talk about language. I think that's a fascinating topic.
Yeah.
One of my professors here in London works specifically with communication strategies in other primates. So I think you would find very interesting some various studies with relation to a lot of our monkey species, and of course I'm sure you know about like Coco the gorilla or Kanzi and his lexicon. Apes that are capable of understanding 3,000 plus English words, and their brain case is like a 700 ish square centimeters on average, less than ours, and they can understand that much. But it goes further than that, because we also have, so like gelada baboons. They live in Ethiopia. They've got these big capes, and they're sometimes known as bleeding heart baboons, because they get these big blisters on their chests when they're trying to attract a mate. It's very fascinating and very gross. But they have one of the dumbest communication systems out of the ground monkeys, the baboons, macaques, the like. And yet, a study was recently done on sort of their chittering and chattering back and forth, their vocal communication style, and they found that it follows a linguistic law known as Menzerath's law. So their most basal means of communicating with one another obeys a linguistic law that every single human language also obeys. Which is super interesting. It suggests that, okay, well, the basis of language may be rooted further back than we previously thought. You can look to vervet monkeys too. These guys are not geniuses. I mean, we're not talking about like super smart monkeys, but they have different calls for different predators, and they combine them with more calls that tell where the predator is coming from. So they can be like predator call for leopard, ground, so that everyone goes up into the trees. Which is really interesting. I think that
that is very interesting.
People kind of sell them short. Like, obviously they're not around speaking like us. And a recent study, it used to be thought that the reason was because they didn't have the mechanistic capability with our lips and tongue and teeth to make all the sounds. But a recent study actually showed that it's not just that; they also lack some of the brain. Obviously there's a lot of brain power that goes into language and speaking about things that aren't there, and theory of mind and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I would agree with you. They're not on our level.
Yeah, and I don't know if you heard my opening there, that they hooked up I think it was an ape to electrodes, and they could make the ape talk, but when you took the electrodes off, that didn't happen. So I think I'm going to look into that more too. But here I have actually a bigger question.
Sure.
I forgot to ask you. When it comes to Neanderthals, it looks like the latest data shows that we're more closely related to primates than Neanderthals. And Neanderthals are like 97% or something like related. So to me, that seems to be a discrepancy there in the fossil record. I mean, as far as common ancestry is concerned, how would you address that?
I mean, I would say I would be interested in seeing the study because I have not seen anything suggesting that. The last numbers that I saw was that we've sequenced like, I think the number is like 5 to 7 full Neanderthal individuals' genomes, because obviously there's, Neanderthals were around like 10,000 years ago. So we have their bones. It's not like mineralized bone as with many fossils. It's like bone. You can actually get DNA out of it and do your best. I mean, it's damaged goods, but you can do a decent enough job. And the number I saw was 99.7% similar to humans when you're doing that full genomic comparison.
Yeah.
I would be curious to see if perhaps they were comparing something more specific, because I do know in the past there are a couple of interesting studies with the Neanderthal genome that show that humans share some traits with chimps still that Neanderthals had lost. Which is kind of interesting. The current consensus is that we both split from Heidelbergensis, and that they had a sort of out of Africa burst prior to humans, anatomically modern humans. But I think that's a good question. I would be interested in seeing that source.
Yeah. I'll have to send it out to you. Maybe some of those other things you can send me too. I'll be really.
It would genuinely be my pleasure. I think
Awesome.
the papers are really cool.
Yeah, this is awesome. I love science and I love learning new things. So that's awesome.
Oh no. Okay. No,
Yeah.
honestly, I will talk anybody's ear off who will listen about this kind of stuff. So thank you, Praise, for honestly, you really let me monopolize the conversation.
Oh no, likewise,
really
I enjoyed it. I defer to the people that know what they're talking about. I mean, they have the credentials, and so I hand it out to you there.
Oh, thank you, Praise. That's very complimentary. Give me too much credit. Oh.
Thanks for letting me know I had myself on mute. Sorry, folks. I was just saying, folks, thanks for letting me know that. Appreciate your help. I was saying that there's nothing better than a praise impression, and Dr. Josh has the best one, which is something to the effect of, "That's been totally debunked." So
totally debunked, man.
Oh my gosh.
Really fun.
Dr. Josh is good in general in impressions. I've heard some of his other ones. He's quite good with them.
Hoven too, yeah.
Yes. That's funny. We will jump right into it. So thanks so much, everybody, for your questions. We're going to try to get through as many as we can. And we have first up that nasty guy, Steven is in the house. He says,
at it again.
That's right. He says, quote, "Nothing evolves, language or animals," quote unquote, praise. Praise, is this what you've said in a recent debate?
Yeah, I forgot that point too, that if there's certain children, invalids that are never been taught language and they go over the age of 12, they never learn language. And I think that's one of my arguments, that for language acquisition, that it has to be taught. And that's one of my arguments anyway.
Gotcha. By the way, speaking of Nephilim Free is in the house.
He's back.
Nephilim.
Yo, Neff, what's up, brother?
Neff is in the live chat right now, folks. So,
historic.
We love him. He's, the funny thing is, so yeah, Neff, when I like reached out to Neff, and it was kind of like, like in the movie, what was the movie with David Arquette and the pro wrestlers? Man. And it had Oliver Platt, who played the King, Jimmy the King. And anyway, long story short, that movie, it's like when I reached out to Neff, it was over a year ago. It's like a year and a half ago. And I was like, "Hey, you're like an old school, like legendary debater on YouTube. Will you come on Modern Debate?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, sure." So it's Neff, I'm working on that one. That's not a great impression, but thanks, Neff. We hope you're doing well. So
next up, it's okay.
I'm working on it. It's like he's terrific. Steven Steen says, thanks for your super chat again, Steven Steen. He says, "Why does Praise look like the lowest IQ Neanderthal tonight?" Oh man, Steven.
Oh.
So that's Steven's very good. He's a good sport. He's making fun of his own photo. For those of you who don't know, that's Steven Steen.
That
real.
is Steven.
It is.
That's a rare self roast. You don't get those too many often.
We like that. Very good self-deprecating sense of humor. And next up, let's see. Oh, snap. Sassy Steven says, wow, praise, congrats on your easy win. Erica, are you going to take that crap?
Oh, shots fired.
There's nothing I can say. I'm helpless to that kind of trash talking.
We can always say about Steven. Beta! Okay. Andrew Handelsman, thanks for your super chat. He says, hi, James. Glad to see you, Andrew. Hope you're well. Appreciate all your help here at the channel, being a mod and all that good stuff. Chaz Elliott, thanks for your super chat. Says, Erica's mastery of anthro knowledge and charming delivery made this a great anthro refresher. Praise had great questions. Thanks, James, Erica, and praise.
Very sweet compliment. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm glad someone gets something out of listening to me talk in a high-pitched, nasally voice for minutes at a time.
That's funny. People love listening to you, Erica. It's terrific. And that was a great super chat. That should be like a Hallmark card. That was great.
That's like that is zero vitriol to anybody. Very nice.
Touche. Ben Riley, thanks for your super chat, who says, survival of the fittest isn't the strongest nor the most intelligent that survives, but whatever species is most able to adapt to change in its environment. Praise. Praise, do you agree?
Oh, that's a I don't know as far as how the evolutionists would go, because I think there's different opinions on that. Some of them say fitness is more important. Some have said strength. Like Dawkins has made it clear that self is gene. Like he would say, it more is like strength. I think it differs in between evolutionists. I mean, that's one of the issues I have with evolution. It's not really settled. There's a lot of stuff going on in there.
Very fascinating. Thanks for sharing that, praise. And just had to plug in. That was embarrassing. We almost lost it. So tonight's been a good stream. We've had like the last two were rough. One, it was my fault. My internet connection was just going kerplunk. And then Jungle Jargon. I have to call him out. Jungle, we love you. I was just teasing you.
I caught the tail end of that. I was getting ready. I was like, oh man, I'm 10 minutes late, but I'll still be able to catch some of it. And then I was like, wait a second.
Yeah, Jungle Jargon. It was like he was doing his debate while he was on like a jog and like doing sprints, and we're like, do you really? We can't hear you. Like, why? So I made that part up, but it was still his connection was dropping. Same thing. Dildo Bagans, thanks for your super chat. They say, come on, praise. Understanding evolution isn't hard.
Oh, that's why like probably more than 50% of them disagree with each other, and they have different viewpoints, and they're unsettled on things. And I mean, I think that's part of science, and I understand that, but it's not as easy as what he was trying to claim. But if that was trolling, that's a good troll comment, though.
That's funny. We appreciate that.
Run off the rage with some wind sprints, praise. In the middle of the chat.
Let me just see. Am I still muted? People, that's not a funny joke to tell me I'm muted when I'm not. That's like,
are they trolling you now?
Oldest joke in the book, okay, people? Let's see. I can't see how far back that was.
Shenanigans in the chat.
I'm lost, but Timothy Bryce, thanks for your super chat. Both of your super chats we're going to catch up. We're going to get to those really quick. I'm just trying to like catch up with these because I've gotten behind. Landon Freeman and Subtracted Promise, we're going to get to your super chats as well. Thanks for those. And next one up in line, Rapture Countdown. Thanks for your super chat. They say, Erica, in all caps. What happened to the hybrids? No proof.
The hybrids. Now that's an interesting question. I'm wondering specifically what we're speaking about here. Are they asking about, because there's a couple of different routes that could go. The hybrid question could be with regard to that one like total crackpot Russian scientist who tried to hybridize humans and orangutans. And chimpanzees, I believe. But it also could be a reference to the fact that it was recently proposed that the hybridization that occurred between the common ancestor of humans and chimps happened from like 7 million, like they split at 7 million years, and then they could continue to hybridize for like 4-ish million years, which is really interesting. I haven't actually, I confess, I haven't read the paper, so I don't know precisely how they get that. But either way, great question, kind of a question. Good burn? I don't know. I'm not sure what that was. It gave me an excuse to talk about the human Z's, though, so always a fun topic.
Sick burn. Landon Freeman, thanks for your super chat. He says, Erica, what would make you doubt universal ancestry?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think with regard to universal common ancestry, it would be very interesting if we found a life form on this planet, even as simple as like an archaeobacteria with a completely different means of coding its version of RNA and DNA, because that would suggest two periods of life emerging. It wouldn't necessarily, I mean, it wouldn't make me doubt evolution, because evolution obviously isn't the same thing as abiogenesis. But that would be wild. Can you imagine? I think I have no idea how the scientific community would react to that. That would be insane.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. And thanks as well. Let's see here. Subtracted, thanks for your super chat. They said, hey, Praise, can you explain endogenous retroviruses and retrotransposons found in mammalian placentas?
Sure, yeah. So ERVs have been shown to be functional. That's number one, and this has been proven with what they call apoptosis. So look into that. Similar ERVs have been found in unrelated organisms. Claiming ERVs are evidence of evolution without knowing their origin is an argument from ignorance. So, and studies have been showing ERVs can benefit organisms in a variety of intelligent ways. So, that's how I would respond to that.
I would say, though, Praise, as far as I know, most still have no function. I read up on that before my last conversation with Standing, and as far as I know, some do for sure, but the majority are still functionless. I think they're still looking, but I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, was this be an ENCODE, right? Is this what you guys were talking about?
We did talk about ENCODE, but this was with regard to endogenous retroviruses specifically.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, I'll have to look up some of those sources later on.
Appreciate that. And next up, appreciate your super chat from Insect Facet. They say, Erica, why full genome comparison? Why not just, e.g., why not just, for example, reciprocal blast the orthologs?
I think that's almost, though, not a great way to look at it. I mean, I go with full genome comparison just because I think it's a great way of explaining it. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can't, nor that you shouldn't, compare other aspects of the genetics between similarities and differences between any two organisms. I do think, though, I would put some money on this, that regardless of how you're comparing it, humans are likely going to come out most similar to one, all of the primates, and also to genus Pan in particular. I think that's typically what we're seeing. I think that follows the trend. I could be wrong. I mean, there's always oddball cases, but I don't know of any. So that's me creating that's my evolutionary rescue device. Tell Standing that. He loves that phrase.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. Timothy Bryce, thanks for your super chat. Wow, we've got a lot for Erica tonight. This is nice. Usually
I never get this many super chats. I'm so excited.
They asked, Erica wanted to say, I recently saw You versus Hovind. I loved it. I want to see more of you here. We'll rewatch this.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. I'm always glad to come on and talk about this kind of stuff. Honestly, I know they're technically debates, but I honestly see them as fun discussions, and I've never had a bad experience with anybody here on Modern Day Debate. So
Just kidding.
Praise had a great time tonight. I really
Not
did.
even praise.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks. By the way, Miguel in the live chat, thanks so much. The movie I was talking about that was like symbolic of inviting Nephilim Free on here was Ready to Rumble with David Arquette and Oliver Platt. Jimmy the King,
Yes.
and Diamond Dallas Page and other superstars from the WCW. So, yes, that's what it was like when I asked Nephilim Free. It was like asking Jimmy the King to come out of retirement. It was like asking the Gladiator to come out of retirement to fight Maximus. Okay.
Oh my God, that's you got a double there. You got 2 references in one.
He's like the Chuck Norris of creationism.
Me or Neff?
I like
okay, Neff. Okay.
Yeah, you're just the boss.
I just want to be called Chuck Norris. But all right, Timothy Bryce, thanks for your super chat. They said thanks to you, James, for doing this. That's really nice of you, Timothy. It is my pleasure. I was just telling the speakers, today was a rough day. So, yeah, long story short, it was a long, rough day. I'm exhausted, but when I come here, I'm like uplifted and pumped. It is honestly so much fun for me. So thanks so much. I'm glad you're here, Timothy.
Oh.
Philip, thanks for your super chat. He says, question for praise. Are there falsifiable predictions made by intelligent design that could not be made by evolution?
Yeah, I would say with intelligent design, and I think there's a couple of them. I would say irreducible complexity. I would say that if you can show that there's certain features or certain parts of the genome that are irreducible, that cannot happen through a step-by-step process, and I would say that would be distinct or exclusive only to intelligent design.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. Next up, appreciate your super chat from, oh gosh, Steven Seen. Do I have to read these? It says, why is James so pretty? That's just weird. Okay, thanks for that. Nasty guy. Just, I always tell him, Steven, you have a wife and kids. Okay. Dildo Baggins, thanks for your super chat. I can't help it. It's almost as bad as General Ballsack.
Oh, James, I am disappointed that Stupid Whore Energy, as she likes to call herself, is not here tonight.
That's true. I will definitely let her know you said that. We miss her dearly. I don't know.
I miss her dearly. She asks great questions too.
She does ask good questions. She's fun. But Dildo Baggins asks, James, did you screen these debaters like Duncan Atheism asked? I did not. If anybody was there that night, Duncan, who was it? I think it was Florida Man came on and he totally trolled Duncan Atheism, and Duncan Atheism was pissed at me. Like, he basically said it was my fault because I have to screen the debaters, which is kind of true. I should screen them because once in a while we get a surprise, but
I enjoyed that very much, actually. Every time, if you haven't seen that, individuals watching, you should, just for James's reactions exclusively.
Yeah, that was like, sometimes I just love it. There's something so funny, and I know maybe it sounds I should feel bad for this, but there's something like sometimes it's like the things that people get mad about, like really mad. Like sometimes it's flat Earth. It could be all sorts of stuff where, like, they get so mad, and Duncan Atheism was so mad because this guy was trolling him, and it was kind of like, Duncan, like, you're playing, like, right into his hand. Like, he wants you to get mad, and it just, yeah.
He would start trying to roast James, and then James couldn't hold back his laughter. He's like, we gotta move on. Like,
yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Duncan was giving me the business, but I'm excited. He'll be back this coming Wednesday. So we have got a
things are patched up.
That's yes.
Darth in the house.
The boys are back in town. Good.
That's right. I am pumped though, you guys. So that's we've got a few more questions we're gonna definitely ask really quick, but I am first. Let me read some of those. I've been just kind of chatting so much. Travis V, appreciate your question. Asks, question for praise. Do you think the question of evolution is theologically significant, since some of the most prominent evolutionary biologists are Christians, like Francis Collins?
That's a great question. And I don't think I have a robust theological argument against evolution being biblical. I can't think of any right now. So I say that is a non-issue to salvation. So I'm thinking, yes, the evolutionists are absolutely Christians, and yeah, Francis Collins is a great model for Christianity. So He's a wonderful scientific mind. So yeah, I have to say yes, they are part of Christianity. I mean, they're not. You can't cut them. They're part of salvation. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. And 223, Mr. Awesome. Thanks for your super chat. They said, James, you are going on Duncan's troll list. That could be true. I always don't tell Duncan this. I know somebody's gonna tell him, but it's so fun to like let the debate venture into the like realm of where it's like it's just as much as he'll put up with it. Like he can still stay. No, that was like the only time he got really mad. But it's just
it was enjoyable.
James, what are you doing, James?
Yes, it was. Yeah, it's we love him. Funny guy.
There's a lot of dunking going on in that. Let's put it that way.
Yes, there was. Ches Elliott, thanks for your super chat. Says, Erica, favorite recent anthro discovery or fact? I'd love to hear it.
Oh man, so many cool. That's a dangerous question to ask me, my friend. Anthropologically, it's really hard to beat. One, there was a find. It was within the past year, I believe, where they actually finally found a jawbone for Denisovans. But you can't beat Rising Star Cave because they're still pulling hominidés, multiple hominidai. They're pulling multiple individuals still out of that cave with Berger and company, which is really cool. But you should also look into a paper that was published by someone who actually graduated from my master's program, who did a study on baboon mothers who actually carry their young around for up to 10 days. And they find that the longer they carry the infant, very key factor here, the young has died. The infant has died, and they carry their dead infants around for up to 10 days. And they actually measured it with stress levels, so like cortisol, and they found out that it's a coping mechanism. So they carry their stress is much lower if they carry this deceased infant around and kind of deal with the grief, so to speak, than if it's immediately taken from them by, say, a predator or something along those lines. And then eventually they leave it behind. So it's weird. It's a strange situation. It brings to mind some, you have to refrain from anthropomorphizing, but it brings some interesting analogs to mind. So check out those 3 things. They're all really cool.
Wow, that is fascinating. My heart goes out to those primates. That's sad.
It's really sad. They got pictures, so don't look at the pictures if your heart is soft like mine is.
That's sweet. That's well, that was definitely appreciate you updating us on the current research, and that was an excellent super chat. So thanks so much for that.
That was a great question.
And thanks so much for your super chat from Timothy Bryce, who says, thanks to Praise 2, I really enjoy his channel. Wow, you got a fan out there, Praise.
Oh, man, that is an awesome... appreciate you saying that.
Can I say something juicy? Something interesting?
Ooh.
Praise, I'm putting you on the spot. Okay, so if you go to Praise's channel, Praise has 11,000 subscribers. Like, the size of a small town. That's how many subscribers he has.
I actually saw that. I was impressed. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yes, and they're not bought. These are like totally real, because you might be like, Praise, go buy some. You didn't buy a bunch of bot subscribers.
No.
These are real. Praise had a video 10 years ago that went viral, and like half of planet Earth watched it, and now and so he got like 11,000. But do you still have that video? Because I was looking at it today, and I was like, does Praise still have the viral video?
Yeah, it's there. Yeah.
Very nice. That's a goal. Going viral is a goal, as long as it's for something cool. So it's like,
That's super interesting. So I just got a kick out of that. When I first saw it, dude, I think I even like Standing for Truth was like, does Praise really have 11,000 subscribers? Like, they're real.
Yes, Tyler said the same thing as questioning it. Praise, you had to buy that. So
Skylar, that sounds like him. That's funny. Next up, let's see. Thanks for your super chat. Basic Bro, appreciate it. They said, when did Bill Burr start debating evolution? Oh, that's so true. Steven Steen totally looks like Bill Burr. Oh my gosh. Whoa. It's like an uncanny resemblance. It's striking. Now I'll never unsee it.
I can't see the avatars at this exact moment. So when I first heard that, I was like, wait, is he? Really? Wait, serious? Bill Burr?
That would be awesome. We'll
That
try
would
to
be
get him.
crazy.
Johnny Miller, thanks for your super chat. They said, Erica's thoughts on the paper published 4 days ago on Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA.
Yes.
They want to know your thoughts on it.
I believe, oh man, things have been a little, if it came out 4 days ago, it's possible I have not read it because I've been very frantically trying to get, probably not going to happen now. I'm going to have to postpone my data collection probably because of the virus. But if this is the one about the offspring that was sort of a hybrid between Denisovans and Neanderthals, I know there was one quite some time ago, so it probably isn't. But I can give word on that, which is that it's very interesting and it lends quite a bit of credence to this idea of species divergence times and species speciation times, because it essentially tells us that there's a lot of interbreeding going on for a lot longer than you would probably be comfortable being aware of, particularly within the human genera, so genus Homo, and that's because humans are just weird. I mean, we have a lot of weird stuff going on, and I think that to suggest that other members of our genus were probably not equally as weird in their own aspects, and that maybe you had some kind of Romeo and Juliet thing going on with a young Denisovan maiden and the Neanderthal warrior, and then they fall in love and produce offspring. I love the tale. I love the idea of it, so I'm just telling myself that's what happened.
That's very romantic.
Very romantic.
Appreciate that. And Timothy Bryce, thanks for your super chat again. They said, Bill Burr, laugh out loud. It's funny because it's true. It is true. Holy smokes. That's crazy. We might as well just put Bill Burr there, like the name. So thanks for that.
Running game now.
Yes, that's true. Travis, let's see. Did we ask Travis? Let's see. Yeah, we did. That was about Francis Collins. Ken McCracken, thanks for your question. Asked, maybe do like 1 or 2 more questions and then we got to go. And thanks so much. They asked, why did intelligent Homo sapiens / humans live in caves for 300,000 years, never plant crops or make a simple shack for 300,000 years?
I'm assuming that's for me. So first I'll say they weren't necessarily just living in caves. There are some really, really cool studies done actually with relation to canid domestication that shows that many of the members of Homo sapiens that were wandering around for those 300,000 years were essentially carrying their homes with them. They were nomadic because they were following a lot of the game of that day, be it mammoths or woolly rhinos or just your classic ungulate of the field that they're chasing around. So no, not necessarily living in caves. As for why they didn't agriculturalize faster, the agricultural revolution, I would recommend the book Sapiens, which really goes over this idea of moving from hunter-gatherer to being agriculturally based and being sedentary. And they make the case, the author makes the case, and I'm not going to say his last name because I'm going to butcher it, that actually the agricultural revolution, while great in the long run for us, would have been really, really tough for several thousand years right off the bat, because you're defending your homestead from people who might just encroach and be like, oh cool, you're building crops, now they're mine, as well as the risk of the crops failing rather than following around a surefire food source. And there's actually quite a bit to suggest, just based off of the skeletons that we have, that the labor was a lot tougher for those who were first entering into the agricultural phase. So it wouldn't surprise me, and this is total speculation, it wouldn't surprise me if there were maybe a couple of different agricultural revolutions, quote unquote, and a couple of times people were just like, this sucks, like hunter-gathering was way easier and way more fun, and less people were dying, so let's just stick to that. But who knows? We don't know for the time being. Obviously, eventually someone stuck it out for long enough that it caught on and they figured out how to plant crops, which is great for us because now we get to talk to each other over computers and we're not out chasing mammoths. So
that's cool. Touche. And thanks so much. Dildo Baggins strikes again. They say, where is all the toilet paper and hand soap gone? I haven't been to the store for like a week. So has anybody? It's
so bad.
Really?
It's so bad. It's bad here.
Wow.
In the UK, it's a mess. Well, I can't speak for in London. It's terrible. I mean, I've got like I had incidentally bought one of the bulk toilet papers before this virus hit, so I'm set for now. But it's only a matter of time, and then you're like, where am I going to get it from? Because people are panic buying. It's crazy. I mean, take the virus seriously, but leave some toilet paper for the rest of us.
Yes, that's so true. And let's see. Yeah, it's crazy. So at my university, and Erica, you had already mentioned that this is, it sounds like it's the same there. We are having all of our classes, so the classes I'm teaching are now they're moved online. So it's, which is why, like I mentioned before, I was like, I'm exhausted, I'm dead. It's been a huge, crazy week since I think they announced it Wednesday, and then the students are like freaking out. So it's been crazy.
I can't even imagine. I have a bunch of colleagues that have already left for their field projects, and the university who told them they would cover their insurance, who were giving them insurance so that if you're abroad and whatever South Africa and you break a bone, then the university will cover it. But because of COVID-19 and how quickly it's spreading, they sent out an email to everybody who was already abroad and was like, "Sorry, you have to come back, or because we're not going to cover you anymore." So everyone's basically having to, field work wise, at least at my university, go through an interruption period and be like, okay, like, I guess we're going to sit around for a month and a half until we can actually get out to our field sites. It's awful. For more reasons than that, obviously. That's nothing compared to what some people are going through, but still sucks.
Yeah, definitely. So we, it's kind of, it'll be, I wonder how long it'll last in terms of this virus being passed around.
My friend, one of my colleagues is from Italy, so she has friends in northern Italy, in Milan, and those areas that have really been hit hard. And she brought something up to me the other day that I found terrifying, and because it hadn't even occurred to me. And she was like, the whole pandemic thing doesn't end when we get the virus under control, because the damage it's done is so extensive. We could stop it tomorrow, and it would take months for the globe to recover economically and with the healthcare system and all of that. And I was like, oh Lord, we got to strap in.
That's wild. Touche. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, me either. Scared go ahead.
No, it's all right. I just spotted Nephilim Free talking smack in the live chat. He says to somebody in the live chat, he says, debate me and I'll answer your question. So that would be fun. You're always welcome, Nev. We love you, Nev. Oh, yeah, man. So, I just, let's see. Sidegart, thanks for your super chat. Just fired it in. Said, great job, Erica. Your knowledge is only surpassed by your patience.
Oh my God, Sai, you are a personal cool guy, idol of mine as far as science YouTube goes. Amongst the pantheon of cool science YouTubers, you're definitely in my faves. So that means a lot coming from you.
Really pleasant guy. He's we've got a good number of debates with Sai. So if you would like to see Dr. Gart's debates, those are on the channel here, and his link is in the description of those. So with that, folks, thanks so much for your questions. We are going to wrap it up. Let Erica get some sleep over there in London. And so,
yo, James, can I promote something real quick?
What do you got, Praise?
Tomorrow at SFT's channel, Erica is going to go against Bill Morgan. So I recommend anyone come out.
Double feature.
Nice. Yeah. That's cool. We can put that debate in the description so that way it's convenient for people if they want to check that out.
Praise, you weren't supposed to tell James that I was cheating on modern day debate.
That's funny. It's Standing for Truth. He's a busy man. You're debating Bill Morgan. But yeah. So is Standing for Truth going to be the moderator?
Yes, he's moderating, and I believe Dapper Dino is also moderating. Which is gonna be great. We're gonna all have an awesome time.
Yeah, it will be.
That's really cool. That's awesome. I'm excited for it. Oh, I see already. Oh wait, no, hold on. They put out a trailer for it. Erica, you're a big deal. When you have your own trailer for your debates, I mean, now we're talking.
I saw that and I was starstruck. I was like, have I peaked? Is this it?
That's awesome. Really
I've reached the top. It doesn't get any better than this.
Let's see. Okay, well, Standing for Truth doesn't have the event page up for it, but I'm going to put let's see. Oh, I'll put the trailer. I'll link the trailer for the debate. And then if you want to see this debate, Standing for Truth always like rips.
He's a showman.
Yes.
He's got the showmanship to boot.
I love that he like rips footage out of like old like Braveheart movies and stuff, and then superimposes the debaters on their bodies. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. But yes.
He's not for lack of creativity, that is for sure.
That's true. So that's linked in the description, folks. Let's see here. I'm putting Standing for Truth's debate with Erica and Bill Morgan. Erica and Bill Morgan. Here. Okay. They'll figure it out. That's the trailer. They have to watch the trailer first. So thanks, folks, for hanging out with us. And once again, both of our speakers are linked in the description so that you can check out more if you're like, I want that. I want to hear more. So thanks so much for being here with us, Erica and Praise.
I got to go see that viral Praise video now.
You do. Definitely.
That's number 1 on my agenda.
Everyone in North America watched it twice. It was a big one. So that was pretty huge. Good job, Praise.
Word up.
Yes. But yeah, so that's cool. But yes, thanks so much, folks. Take care. Have a great night. Keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable.